Sad British pop music is just the best. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason and Crams are here. No Joe this week. We are covering the Jesus and Mary Chain, a band that I'm sure Joe isn't too into. So he's sitting it out. We all take a little break now and then. Although I'd be surprised if he didn't find something in this catalog that he enjoyed. I think it's probably just Psychocandy scaring him off a little. But anyways, we will forge ahead without him. Just 7 records to rank, not that many. I know you're a big Jesus and Mary Chain fan. I wouldn't call myself a big fan. I'm only really familiar going into this with Psychocandy. I listened to Damage and Joy when that came out, and I just kind of know a smattering of other songs in between, not the full records. So a lot of this was new for me. I think this is going to end up being one of my more controversial lists that we've ever done on the channel. So big Jesus and Mary Chain fans should probably brace themselves. But how about you? How are you feeling going into this week?
Well, JMC fans, brace yourself for Jason's portion, but it's going to be mostly love from my end. Felt great. Not going to lie, though. This is my first go around with the 2017 album Damage and Joy. Never got around to it. And then the first 4 are kind of like my babies. And then the other 2 I've listened to, but the first 4 are been in constant rotation in my life for like 15 years. So pretty big Jesus and Mary Chain fan. I nominated Automatic in 89, which is a loaded year, and Psychocandy was my winner in 85. So I already know how I'm feeling about that. And that was the first time anyone on this channel has used the word smattering, and Jason was the first one, I think. Very cool. I have a Jesus and Mary Chain shirt, but it is in the laundry.
Poor planning on your part. So if you're new to the channel here, we cover a different band every week. We rank all of the albums on Tuesday. We give you our favorite top 10 songs on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we usually have a third discussion video based on something that artist inspires us to talk about. Sometimes they are artists that we know and love. Sometimes they're new to us. Sometimes they're even artists we don't like. You never know quite what you're going to get. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any of the content. And yeah, let's get into the Jesus and Mary Chain. Shall I start this one?
I guess it was poor planning on my part for the shirt situation, but a lot of smattering stuff going on this week. So, you go ahead.
All right. Well, I said this is going to be my most controversial list, but not yet. Not yet. I think people will be okay with the one I have at the bottom. And that's Munki from 1998. This was released on Sub Pop in the US. Apparently, the Reid brothers weren't getting along much at this point. You got Nick Sanderson on drums. Unlike the little bit of sameness on Stoned and Dethroned, I think this suffers from the opposite issue. I think this record is a little all over the place. The Reid brothers pulling in different directions, I think, exemplified by William Reid's writing I Hate Rock and Roll, and his brother writing I Love Rock and Roll. So kind of see the different attitudes at play. And aside from the division between them, it just doesn't have the usual quality of songs, I don't think. There's a lot of mediocre stuff on here. I don't know, they just can't seem to find a direction on this. Supertramp is kind of a cool borrowing of the groove from Tomorrow Never Knows. Never Understood, I think, is an okay ballad. Black is decent, Dream Lover. But I don't know, I think it's majorly backloaded as well. But even the better stuff on the back half isn't among their all-time best or anything. I think the best that it gets is like pretty good. So it's also 69 minutes, a little over long. That CD era, late 90s problem. So it's fine, but it's not great. Certainly not as good as any of their other records, I don't think. So just 3 stars for Munki for me.
Okay, yeah, I think that's totally fair. That's also my number 7, Munki. Double album. I do like the bookend tie-up showing the division with I Love Rock and Roll versus I Hate Rock and Roll. I like that as an opener, and I like Birthday quite a bit. Gone is the live band kind of acoustic performance kind of style that they had on Stoned and Dethroned. They're getting back to a little bit more aggressive kind of grunged up sound. The electric guitars are kind of chugging along again. It's not as dreamy and as romantic as the older stuff. There is kind of this bitterness on this album, best expressed in like the rock and roll songs. And they're tired at this point and frustrated. The brothers aren't really getting along, but I do give them a lot of thumbs up for, being pros, putting it into an artistic vessel and putting it all out on the album. And sometimes, like you said, that big kind of, I don't want to say like maybe a little bit of directionlessness, lack of direction can work sometimes, and it just turns into really good songs and a lot of variety on certain albums. But this one is a little bit too much all over the place. Overall, I think it's a good album. I think it's 3 stars, so I think they only have good records. And I don't know, it is still a hard album for me to put my finger on. I've probably only listened to it 4 times in my life or so, and I think there are good songs on it. And I think at times on this album, they're kind of like recapturing the magic. And I think at times they're also coming up with like kind of new, cool melodic tendencies. But on the flip sides, at times it feels a bit repetitive, a bit typical, and I think it falls flat and doesn't have nearly as much fresh ideas and standout tracks. So like you were saying, there's just not, the need to have Jesus and Mary Jane tracks. I do like Mo Tucker. I think it's pretty cool and weird in parts. I think Perfume is really cool, and I love that weird ghostly organ kind of thing. And like you said, everyone says that this album is very divided. It's all over the place. It is certainly way too long. And I really hate complaining when albums are too long because, there are longer double albums that are good and it's just fine. But I'd rather have, if I'm going to be slightly disappointed with an album, I'd rather have it be a shorter album. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. I think Never Understood is really nice. And I love the keys and Can't Find the Time for Times. I think the songs are better than the listen as a whole. I think there are like a bunch of 3.5 rated songs out there, but as a whole, it's a bit tough to get through without losing focus. So just 3 stars. I think it's good. It's definitely better than a mediocre album because I just love their style. And I think even their worst songs are still pretty decent. So there you go. Number 7, we're probably not going to line up on much else, I got a feeling.
No, probably not, because my number 6 is Psychocandy. Super influential in its use of noise and fuzz and feedback and reverb. I get why some people are attracted to it, but it's just not my favorite sound. I do like dream pop a lot, and I guess that's sort of what this is, but I prefer my dream pop to be a little more hi-fi. And then the other thing about this record is just like how good are the songs underneath all the noise, and there are definitely some gems, just like Honey with its Phil Spector beat, really cool. Cut Dead's pretty cool with the acoustic guitars. I generally prefer this record when there is less electric guitar. Never Understand has a cool Beach Boys melody kind of to it. So at times there's cool stuff under the noise, but generally I think their writing would get far better and more refined from this point forward. And the other thing about all the noise and the feedback, it's one thing to do that intentionally, and maybe they are, but I kind of feel like a lot of it is maybe just like they're not that good at recording yet. Like some of the issues with the guitar tones, some of the guitar tones are really bad, not just like cool, noisy, My Bloody Valentine, J Mascis, noisy guitars, but like they don't really sound very good and they're not that well recorded and they're not that well mixed. So I don't know. Kind of holds it back for me. I think they just get better as they go forward. And I think maybe the idea that this isn't intentionally noisy is highlighted by the fact that they immediately shift away from that sound and never do it again. They just get better as they go on from here. They get better at highlighting their strengths instead of burying them like they do on this record. So I don't know. I do get what people love about it, but at the same time, it's just never going to be for me. So there's cool songs. 3 stars again for Psychocandy.
All right. It's awesomely mixed. That's for sure. It's perfectly noisy, but let's talk about my number 6, which is It's close between 6 and 5, actually. And I've got Damage and Joy here, the newest one. I do not care for Amputation, the lead-off track. I think it's one of my least favorite Jesus and Mary Chain songs. Just seems puny. Now, I'm going to start off by saying this is the newest album for Jesus and Mary Chain for me. I've listened to it twice only. It is a long album. I would love to listen to it more, but I don't have the time for times. So I'm going to say this. I think the songwriting on this album is really, really, really good. I think they do a good job of still being Jesus and Mary Chain, but kind of modernizing a little bit. My problem with this album is the sonic nature of it for the most part. I want those bigger guitars. I want the noise. And even like on Stoned and Dethroned, like they kind of went away from that sound big time, but it still worked. On this one, it's just like kind of way too thin. It's way too mellow. And not just in the song, it's kind of making all of the playing mundane. That said, I think the songs are really good. The Two of Us, that one is cool. There's like Sunny Air Dream Pop in here. And just because of like that lack of oomph in the sound, not, the volume, nothing's really turned up. It really seems like a little bit of the heart and soul takes a big plunge here. Just watered down. Apparently it's a lots of reworkings of old songs and such. I like the songs All Things Pass, but that opening drum machine noise is just totally pointless other than just to be like, hey, we know what people are doing in 2017 as well. And even though those moments are annoying and brief, they still kind of randomly come up and just rub me the wrong way. I think Always Sad is awesome. You get really heavy kind of Beach Boys vibes. And just most of the songs I feel like would just be better with like that early 90s production that they kill with like Automatic and stuff. Everything's just so thin. I want the rich, lush, just like confusing mess. And again, it is too long. I do love some of the different kind of vocal approaches they're doing. There's duets here with Isabel Campbell and Sky Ferreira. Sky Ferreira song, Black and Blues, is absolutely amazing. I love that song so much. And I do like when they do a little bit more layering and harmonies here. So at the core, there's a lot of really good songs. I don't think it's the right approach to putting the album together sonically. I mean, some of these songs are really good. War on Peace is great. I like Get On Home quite a bit. But there's just no electricity to it. There's no depth in the sound. And those are just major complaints. I think it's a 4-star album, maybe more, with the strength of the songwriting. And if you combine that with editing it down and changing up the style a little bit, it would be really, really awesome. But it's merely very good. So 3.5. Number 6.
All right. My number 5 is Automatic from 1989. Kind of sort of follows the formula of Darklands before it. It's just the duo with the drum machines and synth bass. However, the drums and bass on this don't work nearly as well on this record. They've got a much bigger, fatter sound, which to me just kind of takes away from the dreaminess. I think also the programmed stuff on this record feels a bit robotic at times, where it seemed a lot looser and more natural on the previous record. This record still has some good songs, but as far as like having an overall feel, I think this one is just a little uninteresting sonically. Musically, a little more hard rocking at times on this record, Coast to Coast and Blues from a Gun. The vocals on that one oddly reminded me a lot of Alice Cooper. Gimme Hell is a really rocking tune as well. Between Planets, good poppy rock tune, some catchy lead guitar work on that one. I can hear a little like late 80s, early 90s Depeche Mode on some tracks, especially UV Rays. Her Way of Praying almost sounds like it could be a Joan Jett song or something. Head On, by far the album's best track for me. We talked about that recently with the Pixies week and their cover of it on Trompe Le Monde, which I prefer to this, but I still think their version is really cool. It's very immediate, infectious. Halfway to Crazy is really good too. I do think this is an enjoyable record, but I think it's a weird shift towards hard rock for them that I don't think works quite as well with the drum machines. It's kind of like a weird intersection of different styles that kind of doesn't mesh too seamlessly for me. But I do like the songs. I think it's a pretty cool record. 3.5 stars for Automatic.
Doing better than I thought you might have. I kind of thought, yeah, like your list would be flipped compared to the traditional Jesus and Mary Chain song, but I kind of felt like you might top at 3.5, which you may still, who knows. All right, my number 5 is Stoned and Dethroned, and I really love some stuff on here. I'm only going 3.5. I think it's very good. I think it's close to great, and I think it was a pretty damn brave step in a new direction. Just comes 2 years after their fourth album, so it's not like they had a big break, wound down, recollected themselves, and tried to do something different. Very more stripped down. It's got a raw live band kind of feel. There's a lot more acoustic guitar. You get less noise right off the bat with Dirty Water. Almost has like a folk country kind of feel. Really cool, like in their own way. It's got a very mid 90s vibe though. You get like some jangliness, you get some sunniness. You get Hope Sandoval coming in. Shane MacGowan from the Pogues comes in. And I never gave this album too much attention, but now I think it's a really cool part of their catalog, especially once you really learn to love the first 4 albums. You really appreciate this kind of different things. Bullet Lovers is quite beautiful. That track is awesome. It's obviously more spacious, less busy, less violent, that's for sure. Even though a lot of the times the lyrics kind of tell a different story, so that contrast creates this really cool, like rustic eulogy type of feeling, which I really dig. And then quite frankly, like it's kind of slowed down and they seem a bit stoned and dethroned. It's very cool. Get a bunch of kind of like a little bit of psychedelia in there with like contemporary albums by like Brian Jones Sound Massacre in a big way here, I would say. I love the duet with Hope Sandoval. If you didn't tell me it was her, you could maybe say, oh my God, is that Stevie Nicks? Like she sounds very Stevie Nicksy on that track. It's awesome. Come on, bit of a mellow, beachy feel. I love the bass work on Between Us. Yeah, like get that 90s acoustic psychedelia, really cool. But I do think the album is in serious need of a jolt. It drags a good bit. It really feels like their boots are in mud here getting to work. I love the drums on Never Saw It Coming. Everything about the album is cool, no doubt. It just needs kind of sharpened up and cut down. I love all the jangliness. I love kind of the new direction. And at the end you have a track like These Days, which sounds really cool because it sounds like it could be an old Jesus Mary Chain song that's like 10, 15 years old at this point. But like if you didn't know it was on this album, you'd be like, oh, they're doing an old Jesus Mary Chain song on MTV Unplugged or something. It sounds really cool. Like it has that live band kind of feel. And there's nothing really anything bad on here. I think it's just, it does not move well as an entire album. It's too long. It needs a little bit more tempo and rhythm changes and some change ups and some electricity in there. Even you don't have to play a lot of stuff heavier, but even just getting like a little bit more acoustic, electric guitar in there or something just to kind of shake it up a little bit would help it greatly. So it's a very strong 3.5. I never gave it as much credit as I should, but now I really dig it. So Stoned and Dethroned, number 5 for me.
All right, that is my number 4, Stoned and Dethroned. So you got a full band on this. Steve Monty playing drums from Curve. Their touring bassist, Ben Lurie, is the bass player. And my review of it is largely the same as yours. I think it's just too much of the same sound for too long. I mean, it's not an extremely long record like Munki is. It's only 49 minutes, but it is 17 tracks. It's largely acoustic, and across 17 tracks, just too much of the same thing. They all start kind of bleeding together a little bit. Sometimes Always features Hope Sandoval, Shane MacGowan on God Help Me, like you said. Those are good tunes. Between Us, I think it's a good upbeat song. The track Hole seems to be like a blueprint that was used for Black Rebel Motorcycle Club and their entire sound. She is a really good song too. I like the sound of this record. I like the laid back performances and the relaxed nature of the songwriting. I think it's really good, interesting, but I think they could have, like, they had this cool idea of like a different direction to go in, but I think they could have played around with it more and found more within that to kind of give some variety to things. They really just like honed in on one sound and just worked it to death on this. Save Me, Till It Shines, both really good tunes as well. But like I said, where it falters is in the sameness. It's a lot of the same sounds. A lot of the tracks bleed together. There are standouts, but the tracks I'm drawn to are all very similar. Even like the best songs here, like if I chose my 5 favorite songs, they're all like the same thing. I only need one of those. So I don't know. It's a cool record, and it's interesting and different in their discography. So I appreciate that about it, but can only go up to 3.5 for that one.
Okay, my number 4, and we're only talking about great albums only. from here on out, which means 4 stars for Honey's Dead. I Want to Die Just Like Jesus Christ on the song Reverence to open the album. I love this constant fixation on like religious themes and everything. I think as writers, they do a fantastic job of being stylized and honest at the same time. Like there's definitely a lot of honesty and purity in there, but there's also a lot of like posturing, and they kind of play it right down the middle, which makes them just so cool. That's the best way to do it. And on this one, you know, you get those like kind of European alt dance vibes. You get heavy, rhythm section that almost is plucked right out of Octung Baby at times and stuff like that. Drum machine sounds. See, Monty is on this one, and he does a little bit of live drum work, I think, and a lot of like percussive arrangements. And then the album has a lot more attitude than Automatic. It's more in your face. It's far less fun than Automatic. It's kind of trippy dance and kind of drugged out. Teenage Lust is a cool song. It really saturates you. There's definitely more sting and bite overall on this one. But you do get a little bit of like sunshine coming in there through like the stormy clouds, like on Far Gone Out. And Almost Gold is just absolutely lovely. I adore that song. Sugar Ray, I hate that title just because of the existence of Sugar Ray, one of our least favorite artists ever. But it has that awesome, cool scratchiness to it. Big, cool bass. You get some psychedelic noise and shake to catch fire. So they're playing around a lot more stuff, which is why it's so crazy they went the direction with Stoned and Dethroned after this, because it seemed like they were really just ready to burst into being like, Jesus and Mary Chain do Depeche Mode. I think Good for My Soul. I love the production. It's kind of classic JMC there. Roller Coaster is really cool. The bass line on that is awesome. It's almost like John Entwistle-esque. Sundown feels like Sundown. It's got like this laid back, fried kind of feeling. Frequency kind of bookends everything. Overall, I think it's awesome. I love the sound. I love the production. Just the songwriting is not quite as sharp as the first 3 albums have. Not quite as memorable, but still a great album. I love listening to it. It puts me in a really cool mood. I think all of like the dance kind of elements give them a little bit kind of different variety to play with, and they knock it out of the park for the most part. So, like you said with Stoned and Dethroned and this, I would throw in there, are kind of like ideas that might sound a little bit better in their head than end up getting on tape, even though I think it's great. I think maybe with a little more time, or like if they just did a follow-up of this style and a follow-up of Stoned and Dethroned, they can maybe really put an ace in the hole for those kind of, movements they're going for. So, but top 4 Jesus Mary Chain albums, great and only 4 stars for number 4. Honey's Dead.
All right, my number 3 is Honey's Dead. First of all, one of the worst album covers ever. It is so hideous. It is just terrible. But the record itself, digs deeper into alternative dance of the early 90s. You got loud guitars becoming more prominent. Steve Monty added to the band as drummer and percussionist. And there are good songs here, like Far Gone and Out, Almost Gold, almost gets back to the dreaminess of Darklands. Good for My Soul is another good one. Roller Coaster and I Can't Get Enough are great. Some really good songs, but there are like plenty of tracks here that I don't care for. And overall, the production lets down even the best songs, I think. For every one of those songs that I like that I mentioned, there's a track like Teenage Lust or Tumble Down or Catch Fire, which I don't care for as much. I think all in all, there are more songs on this record that I like than on Automatic. And even though I don't really like the sound and the direction that much, I think it does make more sense for Jesus and Mary Chain to be going in this direction than some of the weird like hard rock sounds on Automatic, which seemed like just really awkward for them. So I think it is a good record. Just not my favorite direction for them to be going in this kind of like dancey Depeche Mode, but also like early 90s alternative sound. I don't know. I would prefer them to stay in kind of the dreamy lane of Darklands for a little longer. But still a good record. 3.5 stars, getting close to 4 stars, but not quite.
All right, top 3. My number 3, I'm going to guess this is your number 1, given how, I'm just guessing. So my number 3 is Darklands. Number 3, 4.5 stars, awfully close to number 2, 5 stars, no doubt. And different sound and production and mixing and overall atmosphere here then Psychocandy. But I think a lot of the heart and soul in the songwriting is very similar. So in that regard, it's kind of like Psychocandy too, but it's definitely a lot cleaner, a lot more synthetic at times. There's like some drum machines being used, or actually only drum machines being used. There's brighter pitch. But like I said, the bones of it are quite similar. And sometimes this is a knock on bands, but it's almost the best time to do it on a sophomore album. It's kind of a safe album for them to do to follow up Psychocandy with this, which I'm totally fine for. There's not a whole ton of growth. Jason will probably argue there's a ton of growth in the studio and professionalism in the craft of recording an album. And maybe the musicianship grows a little bit here too. But, you know, it's only 2 years later, and I'm of the opinion that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they kind of just clean it up, make it a little prettier, but they kind of, you know, like I said, stick with the same thematic elements. I love the opening track, even though I think the verse is kind of a robbery of Heroes by David Bowie. I absolutely love it anyway. I love the pathetic desperation to them when he says, I'm dying and I'm down on my knees. It gets me every time. And in general, I think the lyrics on these Jesus Mary Chain albums are amazing. I think they're incredibly vivid and descriptive without giving you too much to unravel. They just paint the picture of the music just entirely perfect almost every time. Still doing a little bit of the dark noise pop thing, but cleaned up for sure. Deep One Perfect Morning shows a bit more attention to the parts standing out. I think there's a little, you know, much more less wall of sound or wall of noise, and playing, you know, and doing a little bit more to affect the songs with kind of standout alone parts. I love Happy When It Rains. I think it's kind of a bigger pop anthem for them. Very cool. You can kind of tell they're heading in that direction, which they'll kind of go all in with like the big rock anthems of Automatic. I'd say most of this album is pretty coolly sunnier than the debut. And, you know, I think that it's cool that Will sings a bunch of the songs here. It's like a little bit of a change up, a little bit of different style, but honestly, they sound very similar to one another at a lot of times. I love the thick guitar filling up the space on 9 Million Rainy Days. Like, you're getting those heavier guitars now, which is really cool. April Skies has more of that chugging classic rock kind of feel. Like you said, I think you mentioned Joan Jett, and they have a bunch of tracks that kind of start off where it seems like it's about to be a big 80s like hair metal anthem, kind of like that. But at the heart, they still have kind of that signature droney, mopey 60s pop style. I adore the lyrics of The Fall, kind of biblical and darkly religious. I love when he says, I'm as dead as a Christmas tree, and handheld holy lust. I just love it. You know, they're not crazy with their wordplay, just perfect imagery and simplicity, offering up creativity without a lot to unravel. I love it. Love the little lead part on Cherry Came Too. I think On the Wall stands out the most as being different sonically on this album. It's almost got like this little pretty, almost like Rolling Stones-esque faint little guitar part, like in a country honk kind of way, playing in the background. Closes out with a really nice, refreshing, just acoustic ballad, wraps everything up well. Sounds so pretty. I don't have a lot to complain. It's one of those albums where it's like could be 5 stars. It just isn't for me. So, and there's no other way to describe it. It's 4.5. It's Darklands, and I love it.
All right, my number 2 is Damage and Joy, the one from 2017, their first record in 19 years. I do think a lot of these tracks had appeared in other forms before on like some compilations and things. But I wasn't really ever familiar with any of these songs previous to hearing this record back in 2017 when I first listened to it. But I think on this record, they returned to a lot of their early strengths, perhaps diminished slightly by time, but I think still pretty darn good and far more focused than their last record, Munki, was. The Two of Us with Sky Ferreira stands up to, I think, their best songs ever. I think, you know, for them with their sound, I think they were always like kind of shooting for something on each record and ever so slightly missing the mark ever since my number 1 record, Darklands, which I think is like their sound. And they always tried to like tweak the formula to keep, you know, progressing and changing with the times. But I never felt like they found another sound that they really nailed. They were always just a little off in spots sonically, and the way that the sounds they were using kind of meshed with their type of songwriting. But here I think they get back to something that really works. All the guest vocals on here are really good. Sky and Isabel, Bernadette Denning, Linda Fox, all really good. Lots of good songs. All Things Pass, Always Sad, Black and Blues, Los Feliz, Mood Rider, all really cool. I guess you could say that it's maybe a little Jesus and Mary Chain by numbers, but I think it's better. I would rather them go back to these sounds that work and that they're known for than searching for something new and having it not work out. It's a little like Indie Cindy in that way, where it's a little bit of everything they've done in the past, but the songwriting is good enough to allow it. If the songwriting wasn't good, you could say like, this is just like a rehash, but I think the writing is really, really interesting and good. Yeah, just good songs. So I think it's really successful. After the time away, I think this is the sound you want them to deliver with, and it's a great set of songs, like I said. So really good reunion record, 4 stars for me for Damage and Joy.
My number 2 is Automatic. 5 stars for me here. I mean, I nominated it in 89, which is a loaded year. You get more of a synthetic drum sound here, but like you were kind of referring to, the guitars just come at you heavy blast, and it's badass. The big guitars here stand out big time, and I just love it. There's more bass. I just love the sound. It's dreamy. It's not dream pop. It's like dream hard rock. It's like dreamy action-packed style. Little less effect on the vocals at times, which makes it a little more raw, gives him more of like a frontman quality, and I really dig it. Here Comes Alice is really cool. I think, even though it's rock and roll, there's like some really poppy hooks on here more than anything they've done so far. There's more pep in the step. You kind of like these Billy Idol kind of vibes at times, which is really cool. Coast to Coast is really good. And you even get like some more big leads, some solos. Coast to Coast is like a really headbanging track. It's very cool. Blues from a Gun is roaring and awesome. It sounds like it's like a cover of a 70s song or something like that by, you said, Alice Cooper, something like that. It makes total sense. I think Between the Planets is awesome. It just keeps the roller coaster going. Everything downhill, fun, tight, sharp, bright, hooky, melodic. Don't shake those hips, don't bat those lips. It's got like a sexuality to it. Like he's really just posturing and giving you swag like a 70s frontman would in like a glam band. It's so cool. UV Ray, you get this bizarre new percussion style. I love it. The posturing is great. Huge guitar riff there. Her Way of Praying, super cool. Talking about Jesus Christ again. Love how it eases up at the end. Cool little touch. Head On, is a masterpiece for a reason. Take It is one of the cooler, more moodier pieces of the album, but it has at the skeleton of the song kind of this blues kind of composition to it. That's really cool. And then they do that crazy ranting at the end, so you get variety on this album, even though at the heart, we like to say it here, it's a meat and potatoes rock record, which we usually describe 70s rock records by Thin Lizzy and Aerosmith or Badfinger or something like that, but now it's Jesus and Mary Chain with Automatic and doing something really weird and cool. Gimme Hell is awesome, has this little synth touch behind it, so visceral and tough sounding. And then again, just like Darklands, a wonderful little acoustic piece and drop. The extended version, there's some really cool stuff too with Sunray. I love it. I just love it. Or I'm sorry, Gimme Hell actually closes the album, and drop is extended, but I think it's just a hell of a cool sounding rock record with a ton of swagger. It's hooky, it's infectious, the guitars are big, it's to the point, it's immediate, like you said, and it's really easy to like. So I go 5 stars. I think it's one of the more underrated records of all time. Got bashed when it came out, and people have kind of warmed up to it, but I just think it's awesome. So Automatic, number 2, 5 stars. It's a classic.
All right, so my number 1, and I've referenced it several times in talking about these other records, is Darklands from 1987. And the Psychocandy fans will probably shake their heads in disgust when I say this, but for me, I think it's one of the great debut to sophomore album leaps in music history. I just think they improve so much in every way. The songwriting here is so much stronger. There's great melodies throughout. This is the first record where they used drum machines after replacing Bobby Gillespie, who went on to form Primal Scream. And the drum machines almost act as a third member on this. A lot of this album's character comes from the sounds of the drums, which are really cool. The reverb stays, but the noise basically goes away completely from Psychocandy to this record. It's a little bit sweeter, a little breezier of a record. Still sadness, touches of sadness remain throughout the record, though, which give it a cool dynamic. Happy When It Rains is a perfect balance of those emotions, and I think a perfect pop song. Down on Me kind of flirts with noisier guitars, but they never get out of control on this record. I think the tones all kind of stay pretty reined in. On April Skies, the drum fills out the sound so well, just sounds really great. Cherry Came Too, I think, is a great tune. I love how it gets lighter and airier as it goes along. A few of the tracks sung by William rather than Jim here, including the excellent title track. Closes with the acoustic song About You, which I really like the chord changes on that one. I think this is a really great album, and it could maybe compete for a top 5 for me in 87, actually, which would be the first revision I make since doing the Albums of the Year series. I'd have to listen to it back to back with the Bears and see if it can overtake it, but I do like this record a lot. 4.5 stars.
All right. Jason going 4.5 for Darklands is one of the highlights of my life. So good for you. All right. My number 1 is obviously Psychocandy. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. One of my favorite things to do when I'm bored is come up with adjectives to describe this album. And I always disappoint myself. I think it's beautiful. It's lush. It's noise pop. Subterranean London Beach Boys music. Phil Spector on LSD. Surf pop music for sewer dwellers. Like, it's just friggin' awesome. It's got such a cool I'm riding the train in the 80s and I'm a hopeless romantic kind of vibe. Shoegaze artistry rules on it. The wall of noise sound is awesome. And there's really memorable, romantic, infectious melodies hanging on the skeletons of songs like Cobwebs. You know, that Phil Spector drum beat makes like 3 or 4 appearances, but don't think it's like this annoying repetition. I think it's like this cool theme and motif going on throughout. It's very emotional, but it's like a blurry confusion and sensation of feelings. Just Like Honey is badass and gorgeous. Then you get the feverish rocking The Living End, which is like a motorcycle chase kind of feeling. Taste the Floor is awesome, and then like this sad, angry, mopey bar sway. Hardest Walk is almost like 50s milkshake romance, ballroom dancing. It's very cool. The album is dark and aggressive, but it's also lonesome, full of innocence and kind of like naivety in its affection. Cut Dead Nice, change of pace, a sweet, lonesome feel. More talk of honey. Lovely, steady little beat and cool, almost like harp-sounding guitars with the arpeggios. Then you get In a Hole where the punk kind of fever kind of returns. I love how this album sounds. I love the noise. It expresses so much with that wall of sound. It's wide open and cavernous at the same time. Makes you feel small, but there's like a light coming in the distance. The lyrics are romantic and have really cool themes. Honey and tasting come up all the time. Sad British pop music is the best. Taste of Cindy's great. Love the high-pitched guitar screeching underneath. The is phenomenal. And it's so cool how the songs are sonically similar, but within their own world, they can still be very different. It's like a really dense novel where all the scenes are different, but the whole novel has a really good feel. Like, you get these bright, hopeful spots. You get spots of remembrance. I like how sewing the scenes and that drum part and the building block of that Phil Spector beat show up time and time again. His voice sounds so good on it. Again, this is tailor-made to my personal taste. It's hollow, lonesome, haunting, pretty, romantic. It's like all the early My Morning Jacket and, you know, Neil Young kind of stuff. I can never get enough reverb in my music. I really dig You Trip Me Up. It's my number 11 tomorrow. It won't make the cut, but it's messier than everything else. You get the feedback from that guitar, which is awesome. The bass is burning on it. Something's Wrong is good. It's So Hard is a great way to close it. Brings everything kind of back to reality. I think it's just a perfect, lush little piece of creativity and honest little lovesick romance. It's friggin' awesome. I love everything about it. 5 stars, Psychocandy, number 1.
All right, so there we go. Jesus and Mary Chain in the books. Let us know what you think of Jesus and Mary Chain and how you rank their records, what you think of our list down in the comments. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so yet. Coming up on 10,000, help us get there. And check the video description. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, website, merch, and Patreon, all linked there. Check it out. Check back tomorrow for top 10 songs, and we will see you then.